Start our hour in the Indo-Pacific, where the most anticipated meet between US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping is set to take place later this month. Along with trade negotiations, the talks would include the Russia-Ukraine war. President Trump has briefed the media before departing for the Asia trip that he would like China to help the United States on the conflict in Europe. He referred to sanctions while talking about the same, indicating the recent tariff threats. Earlier, President Trump floated a new 100% tariff on goods from Beijing, effective from November the 1st, unless China agrees to a new deal. This would be on top of existing tariffs, potentially raising the total rate of some imports to 155%. There are reports that say that the US president is mulling on pressure on China with the sanctions and tariffs to bring Russian President Putin on the table for talks. Previously, some Chinese firms were sanctioned by the West for connections with Russian supplies. President Trump has asked China and India to cut oil imports from Russia. Okay, we're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute, and he joins us live from Tokyo. Dr. Nagao, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Of course, Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping are set to meet later this week. How likely is it that Donald Trump can convince some compliance out of Xi Jinping for him to wean himself off Russian oil, something that Beijing is so highly dependent on?
Indeed, very low, I think, not optimistic. Because this Russia invasion to Ukraine is changed to the attrition war. So in this case, how to supply is the matter. So in this case, economy is the matter. And in this case, if countries buys something from Russia, Russia got the income and Russia can continue the war. That is the main point. The problem is there is a gap of the interest between US and China. US want to end this war to concentrate the counter-China strategy. But so if Russia's aggression to Ukraine has solved, US can withdraw from Europe. In this case, resources, including military resources or labor time, so labor powers, everything in this case as resources. And they can concentrate the issue related with China. So that's why they want to end Russia's aggression to Ukraine. But view from China completely opposite. The view from China, if the Russia's aggression to Ukraine continue, US cannot concentrate their resources to counter China. This means that Russia's aggression to Ukraine is beneficial for China, and China wants this war continue. So that's why there is a gap of interest between two US and China. US asked to end, and China want to continue. So that is why the agreement could very difficult indeed. That is my analysis in this case, and unfortunately, China want to continue, US want to end. That is the reality, I think.
Yes, of course, and Dr. Nagao, of course, Beijing has a special kind of leverage. Of course, apart from being the second biggest economy in the world, it also is a host to these rare critical minerals, that of which it has put these restrictions on. Could you explain a little bit about why these critical minerals are so important to the United States?
This is very important because any high-tech products rely on the rare earths. And 90% of the refinery rare earths rely on China. So China intentionally dominated this market for a long time. That's why the other mines in other countries hasn't developed well. So even if there are some mines in other countries not developed, means that as a supply chain, it is not useful just now. Maybe 10 years later, 20 years later, it will come to the United States or other country. But just now, they need to rely on China. But especially the serious case is exist for the United States because 30% of the parts to make the U.S. weapon came from China. Because parts is made in China, and these parts use rare earths in China. So that's why without China's support, the U.S. cannot make the weapon against China. That is irony. So under such kind of situation, just now U.S. cannot decouple with China, but so postponing the tension is interest for the United States. Of course, in the future, of course, the U.S. need to do, but just now prolonged ceasefire